Welcome to the Nerdstalgic Podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
The name Stalgic. Nerdstalgic. Sorry, Beans. Hope you're all well. Hope you're doing good. Welcome to the Nerdstalgic Podcast. For anybody returning, thank you. For anybody new, I appreciate your new custom. Sorry about that introduction. That was me trying to be suave and trying to be cool, trying to be Bond. For anybody who hasn't read the title of this episode and is really confused, today I'm going to be looking at and talking about GoldenEye 007 for the Nintendo 64. Well, technically, it was made for the Nintendo 64, but I played it on the Xbox One because it's now backwards compatible on the Xbox. So I'm really looking forward to this one. There's a lot to say, a lot to get into. But before I get into it, one thing I do want to say is to make sure that you Beans follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod to be up to date on anything that I'm doing. And if you're listening to this on YouTube and you haven't already, please like, subscribe, comment down below. Even if you're just going to say this episode was cool, you're awesome, or I hated it, you're stupid. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Just more interaction on YouTube so I can grow that platform. Would actually be incredible. So, really helpful. Really. And so, yes, let's get into it, shall we? So, let's give you... Where are we? Here we are. Right, I got my notes. Right, so GoldenEye 007 is a 1997 first-person shooter developed by Rare and published by Nintendo for the Nintendo 64. Based on the 1995 James Bond film GoldenEye, the player controls a secret agent, James Bond, to prevent a criminal syndicate from using a satellite weapon. And it was initial release the 23rd of August 1997, and it's now on the Xbox One. I think it's on the PlayStation as well. I'm not really sure, but I played it on the Xbox, and I'll be honest, this game I've always been a fan of Bond, right? So let's just start there. I've always been a fan of Bond. This is a bit of a story time. So if anybody's returning, I do a bit of story time where before I get into the actual review, I do a little bit of story time of how it relates to me and my past and all that jazz. It kind of adds the nostalgic part of it, and then we get the nerdy part after, right? You get it? Nerdstalgic. You know, it all comes together. It makes sense, right? Anyway, I'm a bit chaotic today because I'm very positive, very happy, and very cheery. So I do apologise for that. But as I was saying, this game was very much before my time. I really enjoyed James Bond. Everybody has their own sort of Bond. Like everybody has their own Doctor. Like for example, my Bond was Pierce Brosnan, who was the Bond that you play as in GoldenEye. For a lot of people, it might be I was going to say Daniel Radcliffe, but Daniel Radcliffe's not Bond. Daniel Craig could be your Bond, or it could be Sean Connery or Roger Moore. You know, everybody has their own Bond. It's like everybody has their own Doctors. It could be John Pertwee or it could be Matt Smith. You know, it just depends on what sort of generation you were brought up. You can tell which generation somebody was born from their Bond or their sort of Doctor. You can tell how old they are. Usually gauge it from there. But growing up, I was born in '98, so this game's only 1 year older than me. But even so, I still say it's before my time because I didn't really get into gaming until like 2002, 2003, maybe even budging close to 2004, when like you had the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox and GameCube and Dreamcast and all that jazz. So I didn't really have a Nintendo 64. I kind of missed that generation completely. So it was a game that I never really experienced. As I say, it was before my time. But I've always loved Bond. You know, I always loved Pierce Brosnan. To me, today, I will say that, and maybe this is the rose-tinted glasses, and maybe this is nostalgia, but Pierce Brosnan is the best Bond, and he is my favourite Bond. Again, a lot of people disagree with that, and that's completely fair. One thing I will say, though, I'm not going to be reviewing the movie as well as the game. I'm just going to be looking at the game today. If you would like an actual in-depth review of the Pierce Brosnan years as Bond, I highly recommend checking out Chat Tsunami. Last year, him and Green Shield sat down and watched all of Pierce Brosnan's movie from GoldenEye all the way to Tomorrow Never Dies. I think is the last one that Pierce Brosnan did. They do all of them, and they do really. It's really well done, really funny, really interesting. They've got a really good lot of fantastic takes on one of my favourite generations of Bond. So I highly recommend checking out Chat Tsunami if you want an in-depth look into the actual game, into the actual movies. But today I'm just going to be looking at the game. So hopefully that should be okay for you beans. But as I said, it's currently being released on Game Pass. So if when you listen to my review in a minute and you are interested, if you have Game Pass on the Xbox, it's there. You can play it. It's well, actually, I'll leave that for the review. But definitely, if you're interested, check out Chat Tsunami for the movie reviews and stay for me if you want the games. Please do stay because, I want you to stay and check Chat Tsunami afterwards. But if you're not in it for the games, you just want the show, by all means, Chat Tsunami is the person you want to check out. So, without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? That's the end of story time. On to the actual review. I am invincible. Sorry, I had to do that. I said in my notes I had to do that at least once, so I thought I'd get it out of the way now. That's my favourite quote from this movie. I think his name's Boris, the little hacker guy in the Russian hacker. He just goes, "I am invincible." I don't know why. It just makes me puts every time I see this movie. It just puts a smile on my face. But anyway, on to the review. So for starters, one thing I want to mention about this game is that it doesn't hold your hand. Now, for anybody who listened a week or two ago to my King Kong movie license game review, I mentioned in that one that that game doesn't hold your hand at all. And I quite like the whole idea of no hand holding. Like, I like being told the basics, this is how you do this is where you do that. Maybe even the fact of go here, go there, But it's very nice to kind of play a game that has no hand holding, especially in the modern day, because modern day games, majority more hand holding. You're constantly getting text boxes, you kind of always getting hints and tips pop on the screen. Like, even halfway through the game, I'm currently playing through Hi-Fi Rush, and that game will constantly give you hints and tips about how to do the basics, even though I'm near to the end of the game. And by this point, I know how to play the game and I know what I'm doing. I'm still getting tons of hints and tips thrown in my face, like constantly, like full on, like trying to ram it down my throat. And at first, it was, fun and it was interesting. It was okay, that's cool. But then it just gets too much, and then you realize, okay, every game just spoon feeds you. So it's nice to go back to play games that don't force feed you, that are not like, oh, here you go, here's the basics, but don't worry, we're going to keep telling you you've got to go here, and it's going to constantly remind you. Then we're going to have pop-ups, and basically any Ubisoft game ever, most recent Ubisoft games, they've got like the taskbar down the one side, you've got your health bar up here, and you got this down here, you got the shields down here, and blood, all this jazz. And it's just nice to have a game where, like, there's none of that on the screen. It is just what happens. Like, you're playing as Bond, you've got the gun in front of you, you've got the level, and that's it. You don't need the health bar, you don't need this, you don't need that. And like, it's really smart game design when you can actually find a way to incorporate like the health bar and ammo and all that into the actual level. Like, one of the best games that does it was Dead Space, for example. Dead Space has Isaac's health bar on his back, has his stasis bar on his back, has his ammo count on his actual gun, so that you can all see this while you're playing the game, so you're always aware. So there's no need for a heads-up display. It's all in the game, and I like that. And it's very much non-hand-holdy. It's very much of like, this is the basics. This is how you play the game. Just play it, and you figure it out. And going back to Bond now, it's very much the same. Like, this is what I was talking about in my King Kong review. That back in the day, games didn't hold your hand. Some games told you, some games didn't. Otherwise, it was just a fact of play the game, figure it out. And I think that concept works fantastic for this game, because in this game you have a set of objectives. Every level has a set of objectives. It could be go to a level, find the key, decode key, leave fake copy of the key, and then disactivate generators, then leave the level, right? Now, when I first played this game, I was very naive. I very much the figure of like, well, I did about 1 out of 3 objectives. It'll be okay. So, I followed the level because the levels are quite linear. They're quite spaced out, but it is point A to point B. So I worked my way through the level. I got to it. I found the exit. I found 006, or is it 006? Sean Bean's character in GoldenEye. I found him. He's like, "Hi, James, nice to meet you." Have that little interaction. Then I go for the exit. Screen fades to black. Then you get this big sort of it's like a stats of like your stats of like how good your accuracy was, how many bullets did you fire, that sort of thing. And I was expecting to go, you passed, you succeeded, on to the next level. Because again, in my mind, again, conditioned to modern day gaming is very much the fact of, well, I complete the level, the game let me finish it early, so I assume I finished it. Then you get to it and it would go, mission failed, start again. And it'd be like, you didn't do all the objectives. You did 2 out of 3. You need to do every single objective. So then the game makes you do it again from the beginning, and it's very much of that sort of rinse and repeat. That fact of do better, be better. Learn the maps, and it's very much like the gameplay is very fun. It feels like a very groundhoggy sort of game, but better than Deathloop. You know what I mean? And I have to dig in there because I tried the original plan last year was to play Deathloop and review it for the show, and that I was going to because now it'd recently been added to Game Pass. I was going to play it because I always said that I wouldn't play the game unless it was free, and technically it is on Game Pass. So I played it, couldn't really get into it, really boring, really much of a slugfest, and I gave up halfway through. And I was like, I'm not going to review that game now. But that's just me giving a little dig, really. But like, it's just funny how like there were many times when I was playing through the levels, and it did get a little frustrating where like I couldn't figure out what the game wanted me to do or where the game wanted me to go, because again, it doesn't hold your hand. It just goes find the satellite uplink. It doesn't give you an image of what the satellite uplink looks like. You've just got to think like, okay, I know what a satellite looks like, so I've got to find a building with a satellite on it. That might be it. So you get there and it goes, that door's locked, and it's the fact of, okay, I've got to go find an enemy somewhere in this level that has the key. So once you go and you go through every building, eventually you find this bloke, kill him. Then you've got to make your way all the way back to the satellite uplink. Okay, now you've done it. Oh god, took too long. The satellite uplink didn't work. It broke, and now you failed that objective. Now you failed that objective. There's no point in you completing the level. It's because you failed one objective. So now you've got to go back and redo the level. And it sounds tedious, but it made me feel like Bond. It made me feel like a spy. And the reason is because you have to think about in real life, if you're a spy, you have a set of objectives. Yeah, it's all well and good if you do say like you have like 3 objectives, infiltrate, get the package and get out. Well, it's all well and good if you infiltrate. Yeah, you got in, that's great. You've got the package, that's fine. But on the way out you were seen and you were captured. There's no respawn in real life. There's no restarting. There's no, having to make sure that those people that saw you forget to see you. Like, no, like literally in real life, if you was a spy and they saw you, that's it. You failed. Done. Mission over. You failed. You're just lucky in the game world, you can restart and try again. And it's very much like that. It made me feel like Bond. It made me constantly having to, every time I failed or I died, I had to retrace my steps. And what I found actually, after redoing a certain level multiple times, I learned the layout of the level. I learned and remembered where each enemy was, where each component that I needed was. It made me even use my equipment more, because originally when I was playing the first few levels, I was just using my gun, my pistol, my silence PPK. Use that because it was just instant kill. I was using that. I was maybe using a grenade here and there, but didn't really do it. And it wasn't until halfway through the level I kept asking myself, why am I failing? It's asking me to decode the key, but it doesn't tell me how to decode the key. So then I clicked on the select button, found out it scrolls up and I can see all of my gadgets. And halfway through the gadgets, if you go down to the bottom of the list, it's key decoder. So I'll go and find the key, kill all the enemies in the area to make sure that I'm safe. I click on the key decoder. Next thing I know, the key that I picked up earlier has now been decoded, and now I can go back to the original location where I found the key. I can spit that key out. Now I've left a copy on the floor. As far as the enemy knows, I haven't really stolen the key because the key's still there. And and then I can finish the mission. And it made me constantly think of like, okay, what am I doing wrong? I know the layout, I know everything is what am I missing? So I'd go into my gadgets, and that made me every level after that made me look at my gadgets of like, okay, what gadgets have they given me? What equipment have I been given for this mission, and how could I use said equipment for each mission? You know what I mean? So it made me smarter. It made me a better spy. It made me a better Bond. You know what I mean? It wasn't just the fact of, go in, shoot all the enemies, complete the mission. It was like, no, you have to be clever, you have to be smart, you have to be a spy. So it was that rinse and repeat, but it was fun. And I enjoyed that. And like I said, this game is a fun experience. It gets me excited to play more old Bond games. And I've actually I played Casino Royale on the Xbox 360. I played, I haven't played it yet, but I've got Blood and Stone to play. I've got that to play that I want to give that a go. That was on the 360. There are other Bond games that came out for the 360 that I want to give a go as well. And there's the potential that the people that make the Hitman games, IO Interactive, they're also looking at making. I think actually they're, yeah, I think it was announced a year or two ago that they are currently looking into and working on a new Bond game. So that's really exciting, and this has got me in the mood for more Bond. Because it was just fun to be able to play a game where you have gadgets, and that's one thing that I miss. And I won't go off into a tirade because this is something that really bothers me about modern Bond. And I promise I won't go off into a huge sort of tirade. But one thing that gets on my nerves about modern Bond is the lack of gadgets, and that's why I've stopped watching Bond. I haven't watched the new Bond. I'm not interested in it because I lost faith in Bond. I love Daniel Craig and I love his take on Bond, but when you start taking the gadgets away from him, it just doesn't feel like Bond. It just feels like every single generic Mission Impossible sort of action spy thriller. It doesn't feel fun anymore. It's lost that zhuzh. It's just that that very essence, pure essence of what Bond should be. It should be silly. It should be fun. It should be action. It should be exciting. Bond should be Bond should be given new gadgets by Q, and then you have to figure, oh God, how's he going to use this new gadget? He's been given a remote control for his BMW. How's he going to use that? Oh, look, he's in the boot of the car, and now he's driving the BMW on his phone. Like, that's amazing. Like, nowadays you probably could do that, very much so. But back during like the 90s, that was like blew my mind of, oh my God, that's so next generation spyware. That's really, really cool. You know what I mean? So it was that fun, like getting the gadgets and finding out how Bond was going to use them. And that's why I say like Pierce Brosnan was the last great Bond, because after they started taking the gadgets away from Bond, it just became like a really generic spy thriller to me. But I won't go in it too deep. But this is what I love about the games, because in the games you need the gadgets. You need the action as well as the gadget side of things. You know what I mean? And that's what makes it more fun. So, oh God, where I lost my space. So I do apologise if the sound went a bit silly. My microphone came out and I didn't realise. So if I did sound a bit quiet or the sound quality changed a bit, I do apologise. But yeah, I'm really excited for more Bond. I'm hoping for more Bond. I would like more Bond. So let's hope, fingers crossed, that new Bond can be better from the people that make Hitman. I haven't played any Hitman games, so I can't really say if it'll be good or not. But the Hitman games are really popular and people seem to love them. So I've got all faith and hope that it's going to be a good one. So overall, I enjoyed this game. I love playing retro. It makes me feel old to say that, considering that it was made a year before I was born. It was made in '97, and I was born in '98. So I'm 25. This game's 26 years old, and it's classed as retro. So that really gets me in the heart, and it makes me feel really old. So I don't like it. But at the same stage, like, it's nice to play old games and it's nice to play retro. It reminds me of how far we've come, not just in gaming, but how far gaming has come since I was born. Like I said, it's very, very close to when I was born, so it's really, really interesting to see. And like I said, I'm excited for more Bond. This was a great experience. It was a great game, lots of fun. I highly recommend it. yes, it can be a bit tedious and it can get a bit sort of repetitive. And if you don't like the whole Groundhog Day sort of, failing, having to redo the mission sort of thing, if that's not your cup of tea, then, I completely understand. But one thing I will say for anybody who's an achievement hunter who wants to kind of bump up their gamer score, this game is very generous in achievements, and there's a lot of missions, and each mission, I think there's there's about 12, 13, maybe a bit more missions and each one of them gives you 20 game score each, as well as I think you get like 35 to 40 game score for completing the game. So add on all of those 20 as well as the sort of big lump sum you get at the end. That's not bad. I think about 800. I think it's about 800 game score or so. As well as if you do any of the speed trials, if like this, like each one thing that's quite famous for GoldenEye, and one thing that's kept that sort of flame alive for that game is a lot of people do speed runs, trying to complete the missions and trying to complete the objectives in a set amount of time. And that if you can do those, if you can beat the time to beat the levels in the game, you'll get an extra 10 gamer score for completing the time complete the game in a certain amount of time, the levels in a certain amount of time, and you different difficulties as well. So there's all those little things there that kind of sort of add to it. But if you're just looking for like a Bond experience, or you want to relive your childhood, definitely Game Pass, GoldenEye, check it out. It's a lot of fun, and so that's been my review. I'm going to go off to the end now. Hope you will enjoy it, and I will see you in a bit. Right, so here we are at the end. One thing I do want to say before I properly round off, I do apologise if the sound quality dips there. As I mentioned, my microphone had came out while I was recording, and it was just recording off my standard normal sort of sort of phone microphone. So if at any moment the sound quality dipped and didn't sound very good or was very quiet, again I do apologise. I would try to fix that in sort of editing and try to shorten it down as much as possible, and try to sort of make it a bit smaller. I don't know how long the microphone was out for, so I won't know until editing if it's a very long time or very short time. But I do apologise for anybody inconvenienced. I don't know what else to say. I just apologise for that, and I would try to make sure next time that I'm aware of if the microphone is in or not. But I don't think you missed anything important. It was mostly me just rambling on about probably James Bond and gadgets and going into a bit of a rant. So it's probably a good thing that the mic came out. But putting that to one side, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I hope you all liked it. As always, let me know on Twitter at Nerdstalgic_pod. You can DM me, or you can send me just a normal tweet. Let me know if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment. Again, same thing. Leave a comment if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you've played this game, if you haven't, who's your favourite Bond, who was the Bond that you watched growing up, that sort of thing. Again, I want to know all this stuff. I want to start a dialogue. I want to talk to you beans a lot more and understand what you like and what you don't like and what you want to see from me more. Like, as of recording this, the Ice Age 2 review that I did is my most successful episode of all season 2 so far. On YouTube, it's currently got 35 views, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for me it means a lot. Especially how that on my Anchor I only get like about 5 to 6 actual sort of listens on Spotify and stuff like that. So it means a lot to me. But what it means is the fact of, from looking at the views that's got and the traction it's getting, and how many people are watching it and listening to it, for how long they're listening to it, because YouTube gives you all that analytics from there. That Ice Age 2, or even Ice Age in general, you beans want to see more of it. So I will look into doing more Ice Age stuff in the future. But that's what I mean, is like, if I can get more sort of data to know what you beans like, what you don't like, what you want to see, what you don't want to see, then I can best sort of change my plans or even keep my plans the way they are and try to push more than what you love. You know what I mean? So if you let me know, it'll be fantastic. So remember to like, comment, and let me know about what you like and what you don't like and all that jazz. And so you can find this podcast on Spotify, on Anchor, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music Podcasts, Audible. Like I said, I'm also on YouTube. If you listen to this on Spotify, don't forget to give me a star rating from 1 to 5 stars. 1 star being the worst thing you ever heard in your life. 5 stars, the best thing you've ever heard in your life. 4, 3, 2, whatever you feel like is fair, let me know. It was really, really helpful. I currently found out, because Anchor updated itself, that there are 60 people who are currently following this show on Spotify. So I just want to say hello to all 60 of you, and thank you very much for following me and listening. It all means a lot to me. And yes, so that should be it for today. Again, I do apologise for the dip in quality and sound. Again, I'll try to fix it in post, but no promises, because again, I don't know how long the microphone was out for. So if it's too long, I might bring it down a little bit, but I might not be able to get rid of it completely. But we will see. Again, I do apologise, but these things happen in podcasting. You know what I mean? So please don't hate me too much. But as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. I have been your host, Luke. You've been listening to the Nerdstalgic Podcast, and I will catch you in the next one. All right, Beans. Bye-bye.